Let's see. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the fourth R Relationships Plus program, part 1 and part 2. My name is Laura Knapp. Speaking on behalf of the Resource Basket program here at WorldCap. We hope that you are finding peace and joyful blessings as we come to a 2020 closure. Healing is coming our way thanks to FedEx and UPS, and we're just very happy that you're all here with us today. And it is truly a huge pleasure to have our guest, Lindsay Hammer from the state of Alaska Public Health Division, as well as several of our other WorldCap colleagues, Amy and Eva and Ginger, here in this virtual room. So thank you all for coming. I just want to say that, you know, our Alaskan youth are so dear and sacred to us, and we just want to recognize the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, OJJDP, for supporting tribal communities in Alaska, as well as other tribal communities across the nation in their ongoing efforts to developing active programs and supporting trainings like this one in hopes of protecting our Alaska Native children and youth. So just for those who need a little refresher course on navigating through Zoom, please be sure to check your computer speakers for audio. There's that infamous mute button that has made 2020 so epic and hilarious. You're on mute. So the symbol is in red, colored in red, so that means that you're on mute. And when you're ready to speak, well, just simply go ahead and click on the bottom left-hand corner, that mute symbol. And if you're on the phone, Bay Haven team, we recognize you're on the phone, so please note that this is not a toll-free number. You will be given a billing statement, and when you're ready to speak, please press the *6 on your phone, and then again to unmute yourself or unmute. So also, please be mindful and patient that I, Lindsay, or any one of us in this room may encounter some audio or visual like feedback delays. So we encourage you, or we suggest that you turn off your video camera, and maybe turning off some of your other window tabs. This will save huge amount of bandwidth on your computer. And so thank you so much for doing that. And so please note that we're currently recording this Healthy Relationships workshop live. So this recording will be published on our Resource Basket YouTube channel. So everybody in this room will be given a private link directly in your inbox. And once again, about the chat box, please take advantage of the chat box features and also the reaction button. So thumbs up, hand clap, whatever you feel comfortable with. So it's just located at the bottom of your screen. You are welcome to send along messages to anyone in this room. And we're very flexible, so please, you know, don't hesitate to share what's on your mind. Any questions, comments, whatever you're feeling, just spill it out verbally or through the message box. So one of WorldCap's program is our resource basket here. And so our mission is to support Alaska Native communities and service providers as they grow healthy, successful, and culturally connected Alaska Native youth. So we're very proud to be here, and thank you all for joining us. So we are a training and technical assistance program. That's what we specialize, and we're here to support professionals working with youth. We offer services where people have the opportunity to reach out to a network of youth partners and tribal organizations. We provide online training and resources, phone and web consultation, statewide and regional trainings. Right now we're doing this virtually, so we can't necessarily have everybody gathered on site, but we also have community-based training as well, and then peer-to-peer training and exchanges. We're always finding unique and strategic ways to, well, virtual ways to improving the lives of Alaska Native youth. So we're here to save lives, and thank you, Lindsay Hammer, for joining us on this unique virtual event. So Lindsay is pretty remarkable because Lindsay Hammer is, she's a born and raised Alaskan from Homer, Alaska. Lindsay is the current project director for the Personal Responsibility Education Program, PREP, grant for the state of Alaska, Division of Public Health, section of Women's, Children's, and Families Health, Adolescent Health Program. Lindsay is a licensed clinical social worker with experience in facilitating trainings on prevention, intervention, and post-intervention strategies for addressing suicide prevention, substance use prevention, and behavioral health promotion in rural communities and with various populations. In addition, Lindsay has clinical experience working with individuals with serious mental health illness, substance use disorders, individual and family therapy. Professional areas of interest focus on issues related to maternal and adolescent health, with an emphasis on mental health in rural communities and among Indigenous populations. Additional interest in behavioral health systems enhancement, community capacity building, policy development, grant writing, program evaluation, and community-based participatory research. Lindsay has received her Bachelor's of Arts in Sociology, Law, and Society from Moravian College in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and her Master of Social Work from University of Anchorage. Wow, that's amazing. So we're all here to feed your brain with knowledge and promote open participatory discussions regarding mental health, risk factors for juvenile delinquency, sexual relationships, and how to effectively communicate with teens to empower them to build healthy relationships and make good choices so that it will keep them safe and out of the juvenile justice system. We hope that you will have a great learning experience during our 2 sessions discussing why having a trusted adult is one of the most important factors for reducing risk factors for juvenile delinquency, identify risk behaviors that teens engage in, and techniques for how to talk to teens about risky behaviors to empower them to make good decisions so that will keep them safe. And we also want to encourage you to utilize open-ended questions, affirmations, and reflections in order to better communicate teens. So at this time, we would like to invite our colleague, Eva Gregg, as she leads us off in an opening prayer and a special land acknowledgement. So thank you, Eva.
morning. My name is Eva Gregg. I was born and raised in Kotzebue, Alaska. I live and work on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina people. Um, and we're gathered here today to learn more about healthy relationships, healthy boundaries, healthy coping skills, so that we can go um, and share these skills with the youth that we work with. And it's the youth, we're here for them, right? Like they need us to suit up and show up so that we can hear what we need to hear, say what we need to say, do what we need to do, so that we can grow healthy, strong, and resilient children. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the work that you do. You may feel like the work that you do goes unnoticed and it's not appreciated, but we notice it and we appreciate it. And we appreciate you and everything that you do for our youth. Um, go from here, stay safe, wash your hands, wear your mask, be kind to one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. That was just what we needed to hear. And yes, our youth are so resilient, more so than ever in this epic 2020. Let us bring 2021 a new opportunities and positivity. So thank you, Eva, for that sacred introduction. And now I'd like to turn over the mic over to Lindsay Hammer, Save Alaska. And so you are welcome to take it away, Lindsay.
All right. Hi, I'm Lindsay Hammer, and I am going to stop my video just to help with some people's bandwidth, but I wanted you guys to have the opportunity to see my face and put a face to the voice that we'll be presenting today and tomorrow. But I want to welcome all of you guys to this Healthy Relationships Plus program. As I know you guys all have experienced, it's been a definite crazy year here in Alaska and across the country and the world. And so doing these virtually has definitely changed how we approach it. They're not as interactive. And so I always like to preface when I'm doing these kind of online trainings that I am here and available to set up times to talk further, as well as like, you know, give us grace as we move through each challenge that can happen when it comes to presenting virtually, for sure. So I will note that I will be going on maternity leave at the end of January. So for the spring, I will be short to contact, but I will have a contact in my email response who can answer questions and also provide information as that comes. But going back to the presentation overall for the Healthy Relationships Plus program, I kind of want to just give you guys an overview of what this training is going to be. It's really to kind of inform what is the Healthy Relationships program? How has it been distributed across Alaska, and you know what is it implemented, what locations, what agencies, that kind of thing, so you have an idea of how could it fit into the work you guys do when you're working with youth and young adults. So the Healthy Relationships Plus, or what we call it for short, HRPP, is a shorter term kind of health curriculum focusing really on healthy relationships, mental health, and improving the communication and problem solving skills for youth and young adults. That being said, it has been used across Alaska in many different applications. It's been used a lot with some of our violence prevention advocacy groups, some of our women's shelters. And so while, yes, it's targeted to youth and young adults, it's also teaches a lot of great skills, I think, for adults in general, regardless of age. because I think we all have room for growth when it comes to communication and developing some of those problem-solving skills as we go. So it's part of our 4th R curriculum that we provide through that prep grant that I manage. So it's federally funded. And oh, Laura, I think you popped out of the presentation mode. Skip through. Yeah, so the wonderful thing about the Healthy Relationships Plus program is it is aimed for the smaller groups. So it's great. It's only 14 sessions. So it's used a lot of the times in smaller formats, whether it's, after, evening group sessions with support groups, culture camps. It's been used for a variety. Some schools are able to implement it as well in the school, but it doesn't meet all the requirements of a health curriculum. So that's one of the aspects to kind of provide some background on it. Next slide, Laura. So to give you an idea, this curriculum actually comes from the University of Western Ontario, and it was developed by this 4th R team as part of that 4th R curriculum. And so we just like to, as part of our obligation, acknowledge that their input and their knowledge that went into this is developed from people who all have worked in the education system as well as the mental health field. And they're constantly working on improving and seeing how can we adapt the curriculum and make it more applicable to youth these days. Next slide. So the Healthy Relationships Plus actually had the lead writer of Deb Townsend, and she's actually a school guidance counselor who had experience kind of teaching in the health and physical education realm. And she started to see that there was a need for further health resources in her community that was focusing on some of the older youth in, once they were out of high school, as well as in some of the after school programs she was working. And so that's when she approached the rest of the authors about expanding the 4th R program to include the Healthy Relationships Plus and the objectives that go with that. Next slide. So this is a short video. I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to view it, but we can take a little peek at it that kind of gives an idea of where the 4th R came from. But Laura, I'm not hearing any sound. Nope. If not, we can provide the link to them to view on their own time, if that works.
Oh, would help if I unmute myself. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the YouTube 4th R.
Okay,
So
sounds good.
just give me a split second. Okay, because you can only do one thing at a time. YouTube. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to pull ahead and screen share. Okay, here I go. Can you all see this okay?
The 4th R is an evidence-based approach to promoting healthy youth relationships and preventing violence. It was developed by a consortium of researchers, educators, and psychologists in London, Ontario, Canada. The 4th R includes a range of healthy relationships programs developed for school and community settings. It began in 2001 with a school-based program for grade 9 students and has grown exponentially in terms of scope and scale. In the past, the 3 R's in education referred to reading, writing, and arithmetic. The 4th R stands for relationships, and we believe that positive, healthy relationship skills can be taught in much the same way as other skills are taught in schools. Since 2001, we have developed new programming components, evaluated programs, made regional adaptations, scaled up nationally, and expanded beyond Canadian borders. By 2018, fourth R programs were implemented in more than 5,000 schools and community organizations across Canada and the United States. Today, there are many more program options available beyond the original Grade 9 program. Many of the programs align with curriculum expectations to minimize barriers to implementation. These programs include health curricula for grades 7 and 9 and English curricula for grades 9 to 12. The program applies a youth-focused harm reduction strategy that encompasses knowledge, positive relationship skills, and decision-making. The school-based comprehensive prevention approach includes 4 main units: personal safety and injury prevention, substance use, addictions, and related behaviors, human development and sexual health, and healthy eating. In addition, there is a mental health and wellness focus that is integrated throughout all units. These programs are available for public and Catholic schools in both English and French. To complement the school-based curriculum, a community-based small group program titled the Healthy Relationships Plus program has also been created. In addition, we have developed strengths-based programming that is uniquely designed to meet the needs of Indigenous youth, LGBTQ+ youth, and vulnerable youth. There are 4 guiding principles of the fourth R. A universal focus involves all adolescents in education about how to develop healthy relationships and how to avoid risk behaviors, rather than just those who show problems. Using this approach, resilience for future difficulties is built. The fourth R focuses on positive youth development, which means going beyond avoiding negative outcomes to focus on building strong core capacities among adolescents. A skills-based approach is one component of effective programming in general, and our programs often use role plays in order to build skills. The fourth R is based on the contention that relationship skills can be taught the same way as many other academic and athletic skills, through breaking down the steps and giving youth lots of guided practice. Finally, relationships are the core foundation to the fourth R programs. Healthy relationships are a key setting for understanding the adolescent risk behaviors, peer and dating violence, problematic substance use, and unhealthy sexual behavior that are the central focus of the program. Focusing on relationships has the added benefit of being highly engaging for youth, as it mirrors the context that matter in their social world. The fourth R teaches youth how to have healthy relationships. Students who participate in the program learn strategies that can reduce their likelihood of engaging in peer pressure scenarios. Teaching students to just say no does not appear to be sufficient for them to navigate peer pressure effectively. In order to reduce the risk of unhealthy behaviors, more resistance skills need to be taught to youth, such as delay, refusal, and negotiation. Youth who participated in the fourth R were 7 times more likely to use delay and 2 times more likely to use negotiation tactics to remove themselves from a peer pressure situation. This demonstrates that youth can be taught peer resistance skills. The fourth R team has published numerous studies based on evaluating the program and its implementation. Some of these were conducted within the context of 2 randomized control trials, and others have used different methodologies. Here is a quick overview of a selection of the published research. Youth participating in the fourth R program demonstrate better peer resistance and communication skills compared to control school youth. Fourth R youth show improved knowledge about violence, awareness about the impacts of violence, and an increased ability to identify healthy coping strategies. The fourth R decreases violent delinquency among maltreated youth. The fourth R reduces dating violence and increased condom use 2.5 years later. Teachers and administrators find the fourth R easy to implement and identify significant benefits for all stakeholders. The The fourth R is inexpensive to implement with the potential to avoid significant costs in health, social service, and criminal justice systems. For more information on the fourth R, please visit our website at youthrelationships.org.
Go ahead and pull up the slides. Oh, I don't know why. Okay, hold on. Okay.
So we like that video because it just kind of provides an overview of both the fourth R program and kind of where it comes from and the goals that both of these health curriculums have. To give you some background of the implementation for here in Alaska, it was the fourth R started to be implemented around 2010. So it's been about 10 years. They have been distributing the fourth R health curriculum, and that's 7th, 8th, and 9th grade health curriculum to schools across Alaska free of charge. And so we provide trainings to the school districts, community educators, public health nurses, whoever may be coming in to do the health education on implementing the curriculum and different strategies they can use for teaching it to make sure, because it is a curriculum that's aimed to being very engaging and having the kids interact and learn through getting up and moving some of the skills that they are aiming to teach them. And the same kind of goes for the Healthy Relationships Plus. So that's how this training will kind of go. Unfortunately, instead of having you guys get up and interact and do it together, it'll be a lot of just kind of going over some of the information and describing the strategies. So one of the things we like to highlight that is that it is part of national based registries for both SAMHSA, the U.S. Department of Justice programs, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Model programs, as well as several other directories that show that it's evidence-based. And it has been evaluated here in Alaska back in 2014. And we're actually coming to the end of our grant funding for this round, and we'll start moving towards doing another statewide kind of evaluation of the overall program. So looking at the purpose of the fourth R, healthy relationships, the idea is we want to reduce physical dating violence among boys and girls too. I think that's something that's important to highlight. Violence among our peers and really teaching youth how to interact with their peers and have healthy relationships. Increase their knowledge and awareness of dating, violence, substance use, and other risky behaviors. And increase the students' use of communication skills. And I like to highlight that the communication skills really focus on kind of being able to talk about some of those difficult subjects and to use kind of forward language on when they encounter those difficult situations like peer pressure for sexual relationships, peer pressure for substance use, but also recognizing how to communicate when a friendship or a relationship in their life isn't healthy and what they can say to kind of either improve that friendship or need to be able to remove themselves. And so that's part of the aspect of some of these curriculum lessons. So next slide. So specifically, we really want to focus on decreasing absentees, decreasing suspensions, behavioral problems, increasing GPAs and standard test scores, and increasing commitment in school. You know, they want to be able to have youth be engaged in their education. And so that is one of the reasons why they've focused on trying to make these interactive lessons for the youth. So now we're going to kind of talk about why are we focusing on these different aspects of risky behaviors and peer dating violence and substance use. And it's because we all have like a strong kind of connection here. when we think about looking at how all of these different things interact with each other, it all also is surrounded by the relationships we have in our life. And so one of the things we tried to communicate with the youth is, how does our behaviors, our mental health and well-being all affect our choices when it comes to things like dating violence and peer pressure, substance use, and risky behaviors. So we're going to be kind of looking at some of these relationship connections that have to do with this adolescent experiences that they have. Next slide. So what's the relationship between mental health? Really looking at wanting to promote and educate the youth about healthy relationships. What does it feel like to have a healthy relationship? What does it sound like? And really kind of touching on that hard subject of mental health and wellness. So I feel like I used to be able to say, oh, it wasn't long ago when I was in high school. Well, as I'm, moving into my 30s more, I'm like, okay, it was quite a while from when I was in high school. And I personally I stayed in the family business of social work. My father is a social worker for 42 years here in Alaska, having worked across the state with pretty much every population. And so mental health was something that my sisters and we learned about, and we were taught about healthy relationships because of the work my father was in, and as well as our mother, who worked with counseling youth as well. But there was nothing we received in high school or middle school that had to do with talking really about healthy relationships and mental health. And so that's why we're really wanting to, now I look at this, I want to push this forward into the schools and to our youth so that they can have an understanding of how much our mental well-being is affected by our healthy relationships. So we also want to teach youth about what does the unhealthy relationship look like, and that it's more than just necessarily with our peers, but it can be with people within our community, our parents, our family. And how can they make sure they're working towards having positive mental health and can contribute to like a sense of belonging and self-worth. So a lot of research has shown that youth don't feel connected to their community, have negative outcomes when it comes to mental health, or they identify having been depressed. And a lot of that data can be supported in the YRBS that is distributed by the state every 2 years. And if anyone's interested in any of the most current data, I'm happy to help connect you with that, because it's not within my program at the state, but I work closely with them. And they'll actually be distributing that starts this next year. It's the next round of the YRBS, and that'll be actually happening in the fall versus the spring. All right, so next slide. So why discuss mental health with the youth? I think the key messages are that we want to, oh, sorry, I'm going ahead of me, but we want to make sure to normalize mental health. And so really highlighting to adolescents that, they're heading into the time period that mental health issues start to surface, and that they can recognize those symptoms within themselves as well as their peers, and how common it is to have depression and anxiety in their high school period of life. Unfortunately, here in Alaska, we have such high suicide rates among our youth. And so if we can start talking openly about these experiences, about the historical trauma that so many of our communities have experienced, so that then the youth can feel like they can openly talk with us about it. So definitely trying to make sure we communicate with the community educators too, that if it's something that you don't feel comfortable talking about, then making sure we can provide people who can. So when the lessons about mental health come up in the HRPP, that you've prepared ahead of time who within your community can these youth or individuals who are participating go to talk to someone, having those resources available. And I think one of the most important things is, while it says, mental health issues are diagnosable and treatable illnesses, there's something though that can also be lifelong and that people are also constantly having to work on. So acknowledging how can we develop those skills and those coping skills with youth to deal with that. And I was fortunate enough, one of the things not to do with this standard presentation they have for the Healthy Relationships Plus, but I had a supervisor when I first entered the kind of working in the field of social work and mental health and behavioral health. And she said, every person has had a behavioral health and mental health issue. We all just approach them different. So what is big to you could be small to me, and what is, huge to me can be small to you. And we all are just having to learn our different skills in addressing these challenges that we have. And I think that's one of the best advice we can provide to youth as well, is making sure we normalize about the need to talk about mental health and approach mental health as something that everyone has struggled with at some point in their life, and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and how can we help get you to that point and provide those skills for them. So I always kind of end up moving forward. I'm horrible at these like PowerPoint type presentations, but again, really like encouraging the youth to talk about their self-esteem and how does that connect to the mental health and well-being. And really, I think one of the biggest things is connecting how can they identify their supports within the community at a healthy way. So one of the things when I worked with youth, when I was doing a lot of suicide prevention trainings, we made community resource maps. And so I also really love to do art. And I'd have the youth actually sit down and draw out their community. What does it look like? Where in like a treasure map style, can you write out who would you go to? Is it an auntie? Is it a community health aide or behavioral health aide? What brings you support? What brings you peace? And having them identify, physical people that they can go to, physical places that help improve their mental health. And so activities like that can be incorporated into this curriculum. And throughout, I will talk about how we can use different strategies and make adaptations for this curriculum so that it's applicable to our youth here in Alaska. And I meant to mention at the beginning, but feel free if you guys have a question to unmute yourself and interrupt me. I love to have the interaction as much as possible, as well as questions or comments, throughout the presentation. So.
And speaking of connection, Lindsay, as at the very beginning, I had displayed these hilarious 1 through 9 cat mood scale. That's a very quick and safe virtual activity that you can use to engage, not just with the youth, but with really anyone in your family as well. Just, check in and see how they're feeling. This is a really great way to promote that talk.
Yeah, thank you. So another aspect that they talk about in the curriculum is helping our friends, and how can youth really help their friends when they start seeing these signs of distress and mental health, and the importance of listening. But really, it also provides examples of how youth can access professional help with their friends, to help their friends, and really reinforcing that, while you can be there to listen to your friend, the most important skill you can have as an individual is to connect them to a professional and an adult who can help them get through. So we make sure to give resources to access those professional help, and reassure them and explain to them that they're not there to solve the mental health issue on their own, but rather to help get that friend or themselves to the professional help that they may need. And that's where I think utilizing those community resource maps and lists and making it engaging for youth can help them identify where does that help exist within the community. All right. I think so. One of the big things is, as we all, I'm sure, know, as we sit here on a technology style training, is that technology is ever evolving in our communities. So how does the new technology from iPhones to iPads and all the new access create that fishbowl influence for youth, you know, where they're constantly in kind of the view, and how it's now also incorporated new ways that relationship violence occurs, you know, through media and through social media. So everything from Snapchat to TikTok to Vine. And then this is where I age myself, that I can't think of all the new things that, you know, youth are accessing through their social media. But we incorporate that into some of the lessons on how do you address that kind of thing and the kind of large influence media can have on youth these days. So what we usually do is we actually have youth have watched like a little video, and it shows from like back in the 1980s to the present day on influences that between the two different ones and what are the common themes they see between the two. And what was interesting was when I was first trained in this curriculum, they had to update this video because it kept showing the Twin Towers for like the present day. And I was like, even for me, that's not current. You know, that was back when I was in elementary school that September 11th happened. So really kind of looking and working. So I've actually had teachers in over who in the Lower Kuskokwim School District area take the lead of that video and made their own for changes here in Alaska and things like that. And so it's just another way that you can take some of that influence of media and incorporate it to be adaptable and applicable to here in Alaska as well. So wanting to just add some fun data that we're required to as part of a federal presentation, that 1 in 5 people will experience mental health issues in their life. And this just goes back to what I'm saying is that it's a good way to provide this kind of information to the youth so that they are aware that, you know, they're not alone. It's not just them, that other people have experienced it. But I think really going back to that idea that we all have experienced some kind of mental health issue at some point. And talking to them more about, you know, why don't people get more help? And so I'd like to have the opportunity for you guys to unmute yourselves and, you know, give some ideas on why do you feel people don't get more help when they're struggling with a mental health issue.
Stigma,
Stigma, yeah.
shame,
Lack of access to direct services.
Yes, I think that's a huge issue we have here in Alaska.
They may not know where to get help.
Yes.
lack of resources, similar to what Eva was saying.
Any other ideas?
I always get, man, Eva, you're so strong. You can get through this. You got this, right? Like that perceived perception of strength and resilience on people, you know, like forced in a way.
It's,
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be saying this correctly, but it may be culturally irrelevant. Or typical amount. like in my days in the late 70s, early 80s, that's when mental health issues were starting to be recognized. It was not acknowledged in the tradition. Nobody spoke about it. I don't know how I'm saying it. I hope you guys understand.
It's also part of the illness. Like if somebody has depression, part of the symptoms are not reaching out, you know, or anxiety, not reaching out for help. It's a very isolating kind of feeling that you have, and you don't want to share it. So that's just like one of the
things. And not recognizing customs or habits, or not understanding that indigenous people grow.
All of you guys seem to be able to, like, you could present to me. So if Laura, if you want to hit the next slide, almost word for word for many. Oh. Hey Haven, I can't.
Would you mind pressing *6 to mute yourself, please?
You quite hear him. Okay. So pretty much what all of you guys said is exactly what we want to aim to kind of communicate, is that there are a variety of factors that explain why people, in particular young people, avoid seeking help. It's the stigma, you know, that there's this enormous pressure to be fit in and be accepted, and being labeled as having a mental health issue is terrifying for many youth as well as many adults. And that these challenges are so real for many individuals. So stigma, I think, is one of the largest parts. So that's why we want to try to make sure to destigmatize talking about mental health. You know, the misconceptions that come around these mental health challenges really contribute to, you know, that aspect of afraid that people are just going to tell them to snap out of it, and that it's a sign of weakness, when in reality, when they're reaching out for help, that's a huge sign of strength. I think also, you know, what I believe it was Jenny who was stating it was that mental health issues present a lot about that kind of clouded thinking and that side effect of anxiety, and you know, being in fear of reaching out and asking for help and those resources. And so we really just want to help explain to youth about, you know, the importance of seeking that support and making sure to connect, like, the stress that can happen as they move through getting that support, but that in the end, it's going to help provide them the support to move forward and develop skills, as well as to, like, recognize when they start to have those symptoms and those feelings again. I think I saw something pop up in the chat. Yes, Amy, that's so true. And so if we can connect, having that youth, you know, that there's other individuals, it's great to give that opportunity.
This is Shelby. I was wondering if I could say something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so one of the things that I've come across is so like you know, like someone is so really convinced that, you know, no one loves them, no one cares, no one, like, and then trying like, and that's what I, you know, come across. Like just the other day, my cousin was talking to me and he was like that, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, well, I love you, like I don't, and like he was like dead set, like convinced that no one loved him, no one liked him, it wouldn't matter, like, and I like me, like I wasn't sure what to do. And so do you have any like suggestions or like
Yeah, so,
something or
well, I mean, for one, communicating that you do care and that you're there for them, but also talking, giving them the time to listen to why they feel that way, and acknowledging those feelings, I think, is something that's really important. um, that actually leads very much into this slide here where, young people turn to their friends first. Your cousin was turning to you. And I think, a great way to frame that is that that is the first step they're making into reaching out for help. And, when I worked with clients and patients, when I was doing clinical work, when we would have approaching issues like that, is I never would say, well, oh, I'm sure people, love you, or I'm sure your family cares about you. But, acknowledging that, it sounds like they're framing it around like you're in a lot of pain right now, and you're sounds like you're really struggling. So let's see, who in your community, who in your circle can we have help support you? But also, what steps do we need to start to make to, work on getting you some help to help feel like that's not the situation you're in?
Hey, Lindsay.
Yeah, Jenny.
Also, I think finding out, asking them, how would they know, or how would they know if somebody cared about them, so that you can get kind of signs of, what's important to them in terms of other people showing them that they care. And then you can move on from there in terms of whether, that's something that they provide, or helping them to find examples where people are doing that. That maybe they're not acknowledging themselves because of the place that they're in.
Yes, Jenny, that's great advice too. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, building off what she said is, asking if that's, if you feel like you can offer that support, saying like specifically, like, how can I make you, help make you feel like I care? What can show? So I think that's sometimes some of the hardest things for any of us to be able to identify is, what does being supported and being cared about look like, and what do we need to feel that way? And communicating that with the youth, talking with them about how they can navigate those experiences and those feelings. And when they have a friend who comes to them as well with similar like feelings and experiences, how do they help, support that friend and not just necessarily disregard, those feelings that's going on with their friend, and getting them connected to some support and help. So, one of the large aspects they are, oh, thank you for joining us, Jenny. We're glad to have you. We hope you can join tomorrow too. One of the aspects of the curriculum is when we're talking about mental health and suicide. They're very heavy subjects. And as many of you guys, I'm sure, know, we all have our different stories when it comes to these, experiences. And so we want to make sure we can also connect it and offer it closing. And so when it comes to these mental health lessons, we always try to find like a positive way to close those out. And so the next slide, which I'll have Laura switch to, is a video that is just a resource we provide. It's not specific for this curriculum, but it just is like a cute way, and it talks about some of those coping skills and those building resiliency skills through this lesson. And so we're going to show this little video so you guys just have an idea. but it's accessible on YouTube. Even if you weren't teaching this curriculum, it's a great just thing to have. I've used it with youth when had nothing to do with actually doing the HRPP curriculum with them, but actually using it when I would teach and train with them and kind of connect, because kids find it engaging. So I'll let Laura pull that up for us. I'll mute myself.
Here's a story on how strange his life with its changes that had happened not long ago. On a high mountain plain where the sagebrush arranges a playground south of the snow, lived a lamb with a coat of remarkable sheen. It would glint in the sunlight, all sparkly and clean, such a source of great pride that it caused him to pray. And he'd break out in high step and dance. He would dance for his neighbors across the way. I must say that they found his dancing and handsome, for that also joined in the play. One day, then abounding up the slope came a great American jackalope. This sage of the sage, this rare hair of hope, caused to pause and check out the lamb. Hey kid, why the mope? I used to be something all covered with fluff, and I dance in the sunlight, show off my stuff. Then he hauled me away in a manner quite rough. Shared me and dumped me back here in the buff. And that's not enough. Now my friends all laugh at me, because they think I look ridiculous, funny, pink. Pink? Well, what's wrong with pink? Seems you've got a pink ink in your thing. Doesn't matter what color. Black is nope. Be it pink, purple, or heliotrope. Now, sometimes you're up and sometimes you're down. When you find that you're down, well, just look around. You still got a body, good legs and fine feet. Get your head in the right place, and hey, you're complete. Now, as for the dancing, you can do more. You can reach great heights. In fact, you can soar. You just get a leg up and you slap around down, and you're flying. You're up in what's called the bound, bound and rebound, bound, and you're up right next to the sky. And I think you can do it if you gave it a try. First, get a leg up, slap around down. So every year, long about May, they load him up and they haul him away. They shape and dump it all naked and bare. He learned to live with it. He didn't care. He just bound and rebound. Now in this world, ups and downs. So nice to know there are jackalopes around.
So hopefully you guys all, I know that was kind of quiet to hear, but could hear it some, and we can provide, I think it was actually provided in the email yesterday.
It was, yeah.
But it's a great just resource to have when working with youth in general. And one of the things we recommend is like having that at the end of some of the lessons that talk about coping skills and resiliency, and, you know, explaining to youth that, you know, regardless of how we feel, that there's always hope and there's ways that we can rebound and we can move forward to situations. And it might take a lot of support, but that we can get through it and we can get better with that support. And what does that look like for all of us? And, you know, how can we make it be something that is positive for the youth too? So, you know, reaching out for that support can be a positive thing. So I know we've been presenting for about like an hour. I wanted to give everyone a quick chance to get up, get a refreshment if you need, take a break. So maybe, Laura, we could come back at, it says it's 11:06 now, so maybe at 11:10, just like a quick 5-minute break.
Yeah, sure, let's do that. I'm gonna go ahead and pause this recording. So feel free to stretch your legs, do whatever you need to do, make yourself at home.
Laura, what time?
Oh, about 11:10, so
Okay.
about 5 minutes or so.
Thanks.
I'm gonna go ahead and do some jumping jacks. Get the blood going.
All right, we can give it a minute, and then unless everyone thinks they're back from the short break.
I did about 50 jumping jacks.
Ah, Jenny, you're back. Okay. And yes, Jenny, you are signed in as Laura Knapp again.
I can go ahead and rename you. Or what you can do is right click on the, actually I can't do two things at once because when I'm in full screen, I can't see what's in the chat. But what you can do is, recalling from memory, you click on your video, right click, and then you can say rename.
No, it's one of those things with Zoom. I always click remember my name, but it's still depending on if I'm on my laptop versus my work computer. Sometimes it has my married name Hammer. Sometimes it has Henkelman, my maiden name. And I get very confused.
I bet. I know there's so much to keep track. So I was like, oh, did I change my name? No, I'm still at this name. And you know. But when I gave everybody the Zoom link, I had everybody named as Laura Knapp for just for security.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we've got people coming back, so we'll get started just so I can be respectful of your guys' time and everything. So we're going to kind of go into the framework of the specific goals and strategies of Healthy Relationships Plus program. And so we'll go through a few of the things of what kind of our role is when, or community educators, that kind of thing, in providing the curriculum, and some of the kind of each broken down aspects. And then tomorrow we'll go further into the rest of the curriculum to kind of close out the training. So you want to go to the next slide, Laura? You know, first we want to talk about like, what are we trying to do? So kind of what I focused on at the beginning of this is promoting that discussion about mental health and the challenges and doing it in a safe and accepting environment. So talking about the issues, what are the signs to look for, and how might they help their friends and their family members, and how can they access help? And so one of the big things we want to talk about is creating that safe and accepting environment. So if this is the first, maybe the first gathering with the youth that you have, not jumping straight into that content and that work, but doing some type of icebreaker. So this was usually where I would have you guys jump up and do one of our icebreakers. But one of the great ones we have, and I have found very adaptable for here in Alaska, is using several different photos, about 4 to 5 photos, and have them hanging up around the room. This is very much like the cat photo, but have youth go stand by the photo that best represents how are they feeling today. And I actually usually do this at the beginning of every training to have people kind of identify. And the photos I use are very different. Like they have different, maybe one's very colorful, one's a sunrise, some of it's food, like a race car, and having them go kind of stand by, and then they talk with everyone. After a few minutes, everyone gets to their point, have them talk with their group about why they chose that photo, and then give them the opportunity to, decide, like, is this how I feel, or do I feel like I want to move to one of the other photos? And if they want to, give a minute for that to happen. And then have each group kind of report out for that group did they choose that photo, and what kind of themes in that group they did. And so this is just an opportunity to kind of start getting them engaged with each other and kind of talk about their feelings and what's going on and that kind of thing before you head into some of the more difficult subjects that can come in the curriculum. So the curriculum is framed to have these kind of icebreakers and strategies throughout it. And then I am working on like kind of a resource USB full of different resources and adaptations that people can do to make it more culturally relevant. So I have teachers who have the youth actually go get and take photos for future icebreakers of their community that they can use, so that then when the youth are deciding it, they see something that relates to them specifically. So going forward, another thing we really want to focus on is managing stress and emotional well-being. I think in today's world during this pandemic, this is something all of us are having to relearn and rethink about teaching these skills to youth, but also for ourselves and managing our own stress and emotional well-being and having those check-ins and recognizing when we're talking about this stress level and emotional well-being and managing them, teaching the youth about what the coping strategies that are healthy versus unhealthy, and really looking at like what can trigger their stress for them personally and recognizing how that stress happens, and providing kind of that open communication with them to talk about it. And also through some of the activities that are provided in the lessons, kind of help you as the facilitator and the educator know what's going on and being able to read the group that you're working with. One of the things I definitely am trying to highlight these days when I am talking with individuals is to recognize, like, I know we've been in this for 9 months with this pandemic, but people think that, we've figured out routines, there's a vaccine coming, but recognizing that there is still this underlying stress that we are all experiencing. And so it's okay to still feel uncomfortable and exhausted from it, and help kind of recognize, like, we can acknowledge that and still say, this is what I can do though to take care of myself and not to feel guilty and having that self-care. So the other thing we really like to focus on is youth's relationships and what contributes to that, their emotional well-being, and connecting how do those happen. And it's more than just necessarily like romantic relationships, but our friendships, our family relationships, and that profound impact that these relationships have, both on our stress level, but on how youth view themselves. And kind of really looking at how can we understand the healthy relationships that provide us support and understanding versus the ones that can cause stress and low self-esteem. And I think with youth, that's where we're connecting that need to have the boyfriend or the girlfriend, and looking at where is it though a healthy relationship? Is that providing them the support they need? And creating kind of a situation that they can learn more about how that an unhealthy relationship really can have that negative effect on their emotional and mental health well-being. But so often I feel like it sounds like we're highlighting just them recognizing where their relationships may be impacting them, but we also try to work with them on recognizing how they function in their relationships. Are they themselves being someone who is providing a positive and healthy relationship in it, understanding their own behaviors and the impact it can have on our lives? So like some of the things they try to work on is like how to frame an apology. And I will fully admit and share that I was, and sometimes could probably still be, I'm the middle child of 3 girls with my sisters, and be told to go apologize for something. Who knows what I did, but I'd be like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. That's not an apology. And my sisters love to remind me of that, especially as they give me advice. I bring my own first child into the world. But so really working with youth on those, developing those communication skills on how they can contribute positively and healthy in relationships, and acknowledging our mistakes. How do you have a positive apology when you have made a mistake? And then also, how can they receive, an apology healthy, but also recognize when you might not get the apology you feel you need in a situation too. So these are all kinds of some of the skills we are working with youth on in the communication aspects and strategies of this health curriculum. So, going with the mental health realm of helping their friends, kind of working with them and recognizing the signs, how can they help them, where are those resources available for them, and highlighting some of the things that are really important is like our crisis line. So we are fortunate here in Alaska that we have the Alaska Care Line. It is available. They have, I need to check actually if they still have the texting option. They did a few years ago, but I know it's been going up and down depending on their volunteers for it. But there's also the national one. And just to highlight some of the fact that like there's so many really great resources available to youth, but making sure that we're recommending ones that are supportive and helpful. I always like, people look at apps and things like that, and they can be very useful when it comes to meditation and coping skills, but making sure to kind of steer the youth away from the apps that encourage like chat room support necessarily, where it's not a specific provider or a legitimate provider, but an open forum kind of style, because those can create really harmful and negative effects on youth, but on anyone who's participating in them, especially if it's not something that's monitored for safety and things like that. So making sure we're communicating about how, yes, there are resources out there and what are the important and healthy resources that are available. Just wanted to check. Okay, how I'm doing on time. So, and kind of building off the last slide is looking at when communicating with like the youth about they're not entirely responsible for their helping their friend who's in trouble or helping their family member who may be in trouble. And they're not there to fix it. And this is something also I talk about with adults, and when I was working with them doing training, is if you're someone who doesn't have that professional skills and background, we never want to go outside our scopes of skills and comfortability. Same way I would not start providing therapy to someone if it's not within my realm of training or scope. If it's not a strategy that I feel like I have received the proper training and scope for. So connecting with them, how can they be helpful and get their friend connected to the professional help that they need and still be supportive and not make them feel like they're just handing their friend off. And that really just explaining to him that some situations are beyond our control. And so that's why it's the most important thing is to getting them to someone who can help them, or getting them to a teacher who can help provide them and connect them to that help. So one of the big things we try to communicate with teachers and the educators, whoever may be presenting the curriculum, is that we want to be able to model the behavior that we're encouraging. And that talking about these subjects, we all have our different stories and our own experiences with mental health and suicide, and that they're very difficult. And so if it's something that you're not comfortable talking with, looking to who could you kind of tag team with, who could help present on these subjects when these lessons come up. So one of the things I also like to talk about, which not necessarily with just mental health and suicide, but in general, any of the healthy relationships, is youth are watching us adults. They see us interact. And, from birth on, kids are learning from what they are observing and the interactions they have. And so we want to make sure we as adults are also modeling the positive behavior. So there's kind of role plays throughout the curriculum that if you have another co-teacher or community educator that you're working with, we always try to make sure, yes, it's entertaining to show the wrong way to do something, but in some ways that can be cement more than showing the right way, the positive way in communication in a role play. And so making sure that we are constantly modeling that positive behavior that we are educating on, both when we're doing role plays, but when we're interacting with our colleagues and peers where youth might be observing us. And then, I think also just kind of talking about if you feel uncomfortable about something, making sure not to share too much of a personal experience if it's not something you feel safe doing or you think that could trigger other youth. And I always say it's important to acknowledge what the lesson is going to be about, so that youth and anyone else who may be participating know that it could be triggering subjects. And so this is who's going to be here to support you, whether it's you or someone else if they need to talk afterward. And then this is not to do with actually teaching the youth directly, but you as an educator, whether you're going into school or it's part of your agency, it's really important to know the different procedures and policies organizations have when youth could potentially disclose risk and harm. I'm sure many of you know, but it's really imperative never to promise them that it's going to stay confidential between you and them, because you don't want to then break that trust when you need to connect them to someone who may be getting help. And then also for your own professional well-being, knowing what steps do you need to take in these situations, whether it's disclosure of abuse or sexual abuse or concern for harming themselves or someone else. What are the specific steps? And so it can vary from organization to organization, agency to agency, and at state levels too. So if you have a professional license or something like that, you also have obligations there that may be conflicting with your organization. And so making sure that you know, you can acknowledge what that is. Like, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and so that is where I always come from first, is, you know, my code of ethics that has to do with that professional. But I'm no longer working in clinical work in my everyday job, but it doesn't mean that I don't encounter those kind of interactions and experience in some of the work I do. And so it's something that I always make sure I'm referencing back to. And this, I kind of actually, I guess, jumped ahead, but, you know, when responding to the disclosure and help seeking attempt by a youth, really kind of checking and self-reflecting about how are you responding? And so we like to use this form called for a response. So we're going to go over that. So you guys kind of have an opportunity to think. So you want to go to the next slide? These are the 4 A's, you know, affirm, ask, assess, and act. I think one of the biggest things that we're going to highlight on is the act aspect, but we're going to start talking about affirm first. So next slide. So we want to acknowledge and affirm the student's feelings or the individual's feelings. I often say student, but I mean, it could be a youth, it could be someone, depending on your organization, it could be, you know, older youth, it could be adults, but whoever is maybe disclosing to you, affirm their feelings and validate them. Meaning if they say, you know, I've thought about killing myself, not having your first response be, well, you shouldn't do that. Or that's, you know, that's not the case. You know, obviously that is the first response and we're human. So if that happens, that's okay. But then acknowledge, like, you know, your mistake and say, I'm sorry, like, you know, what I want to say is, how can I help you? And how can I support you? But affirming, you know, that they did the right thing coming to you, you're there to be a support and connect them to where they need help, and reflect their emotions, really give them that insight that you are listening and you hear what they have to say. And, you know, I think often we're like, reflect emotions, that reflective listening aspect. You know, this is really frustrating for you, or this is very scary. But I usually like to frame it more on, you know,
You don't know anything about cat.
That like, this is, you know, sounds really scary for you. Is that like the right emotion? Asking them, did I hear you right? You know, acknowledging and confirming that. Second is ask questions. Try to aim it in the most non-judgmental tone, kind of gathering about like the who, the what, the where, the why, and realize like you're not the investigator, you're not the interrogator, you're the educator, you're the facilitator, unless you are someone who is in a professional position. Maybe you are a community therapist or that, but, you know, recognizing your role too. And asking the questions. Most important question is, how can we keep them safe? Asking them, you know, in this immediate moment, what's going on? You know, it's not trying to find out who's at fault, but rather kind of going on figuring out, okay, what is the situation we're in right now, and how are we going to get to the most safe option? So questions could be something along the lines of like, how long has this been happening to you? Or when did an incident occur? If it was something like a bullying incident or that kind of thing, but kind of getting an idea. So if it's something going on at home, you know, and it's the end of the day, it's not a safe situation necessarily for that kid to go home right away. So you want to connect on like, okay, what do we need to do to protect and help this youth? So the letter assess, A, are kind of looking at this really being one of the most important steps, which is back to what I was saying, is like, what is the immediate safety issue? And depending on where you are and what you're at, like the biggest thing is figuring out what is the like potential harm for the person and making a plan. And there's great templates for safety plans, and I'm happy to provide those as different resources. But making sure we can get an idea of, is this something that's just a thought right now versus do they have an actual plan, and being able to help kind of connect and hear from the youth so that then when you're with them, connecting them to the support, that they know that you were there and you were listening and you heard what they had to say. And then the last one is ACT. And this is one I think that is really the most important, because if a youth comes and discloses to you and nothing happens, that doesn't tell them that you were there and you were listening, you're there to help. They'll feel, you know, oh, I just disclosed all these things and nothing has happened afterward. So explaining to them that this isn't something that we can immediately fix, but this is the first step we're going to take. And then this is the next step we're going to take. And acknowledging, you know, you don't necessarily have the answers right away, but you're going to go with them step by step until you can get them to the right person. So is the next step talking with a principal? Is the next step connecting them with a community health aide? You know, and making sure, explaining to them that you're there to help keep them safe while you guys get them connected to that next step. And acknowledging and not keeping what the next step may be from the youth, because that can be really detrimental to that sense of support and security that they've clearly felt they could have by coming to you. And again, I have to state, make sure you're following all protocols in terms of reporting and things like that. And if you don't know, consulting with a supervisor or whoever may be needed on what is the next step. So one of the things as an educator we want to consider is our own reflection of where are we at? What are our beliefs and attitudes when it comes to things like this mental health challenges, suicide? What is our own story? And so if you guys were choosing to use this curriculum in your work, it's a great thing to make sure you're reading ahead before you just jump right in to teaching one of the lessons, so you know what's going to come up, because it's the same idea with many mental health trainings. I'm sure if any of you guys have taken them, that if you had a name tag on that stated your belief, how do you think people would refer? So perfect example is when working in suicide prevention. If I had a name tag that said, I think suicide is wrong, do you think someone who is struggling with thoughts of suicide who came up to me would feel comfortable talking to me and saying, you know, this is something I'm really struggling with, if they saw that's my name tag, you know? So kind of recognizing, what does your name tag say? And how can you make sure to keep your own personal beliefs separate, and acknowledging that we have these experiences and that they can impact how we present ourselves. So we want to try to keep it as most unjudgmental as possible, so that we can create that safe space for the youth to learn about these subjects. And then the biggest thing, and today during this pandemic in general, not even related to teaching about mental health, about suicide, about healthy relationships, is the self-care for ourselves as well as for the youth. We definitely like to talk about self-care with the youth, but it can also be extremely draining. And that idea that we need to put our own face mask on when we're in the plane, the oxygen mask first before we help someone else, we want to make sure as community educators, as people who are there, that we're in the right headspace to help the youth. So making sure you're taking care of yourself and creating that balance. So I always like to recommend that after, find like one self-care strategy. And I love talking and working with youth for them to help to, identify what are self-care strategies, because it's also a really great way to help reinforce what's healthy self-care and what's not healthy self-care. So going home and having a glass of wine is not necessarily a, self-care strategy that we would want to always encourage, but going home and taking a hot bath, if I had a bathtub, at the moment I have a bathroom that is just ripped apart, would be a really great self-care strategy for me. But like kind of taking some time with working on youth to talk about it, but also thinking about yourself too. And so that's something we really want to make sure educators are aware of, that a lot of feelings can come up when providing this curriculum. I think this could be the first time that I am like ahead of schedule on a presentation, so I must not be too chatty. So this will give us good discussion time.
Yeah, Lindsay, we appreciate your presence and all your work you do here in Alaska. Is there anyone, we would like to open up this floor for questions, personal reflections. Anyone can unmute themselves and just go ahead.
I can also definitely keep talking, you guys. I'm never short for words. That is for sure. But Bayhaven, I really understand.
I just really need more examples of unhealthy coping skills.
I'm so sorry. I cannot.
Do you have any more examples for unhealthy coping skills?
I heard it was a question about unhealthy coping skills.
Could you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. Do you have any more examples of unhealthy coping skills?
I mean, absolutely. So definitely when we're talking about unhealthy coping skills are things like, substance use. Alcohol is something that, yes, with moderation, you can relax and things like that, but it's never something I like to encourage as being a coping skill, because it can also have a very negative effect. So, so kind of thinking about what kind of coping skills are healthy, I think are a lot easier to focus on. So unhealthy coping skills can be something that's going to be detrimental to your health, that kind of alters your state of mind negatively. So that's really kind of where I focus when I'm thinking about the negative coping skills, and really trying to, when I'm providing them to youth, is positive coping skills. But engaging in conversation with someone and talking, when we've talked about healthy relationships, like who's a healthy person in my life I can go to talk to? Like, I love my older sister, but she drives me crazy. So she is not someone with a healthy coping skill for me to reach out to. But my younger sister and I are much closer, and she is someone who brings me peace and grounding. So kind of looking and doing kind of an assessment of, after that, what am I feeling? Am I feeling relaxed? Am I feeling calmer? I think that's one of the ways that I kind of identify what is healthy and what is unhealthy in the coping skills. Christy,
Thank you.
I see in the chat, I just didn't know if you had a question.
Amy is asking if the PowerPoints will be shared.
Oh, I mean, I don't know your guys' rules for sharing the PowerPoints. We can provide it like as a PDF, absolutely. For at least the healthy relationships part, for sure.
Yeah, and this is also a live recording, so you're also welcome to watch this the whole PowerPoint presentation as well, and all the YouTube links.
And I will also phrase, so I'm going to put my email again so nobody has to scroll through the chat. But if you signed up, I'm sure Laura can also send you my email and contact information. But if you do have interest in the Healthy Relationships Plus curriculum and providing it, all I need you to do is actually just email me your contact information, a mailing address, and that you want that specific curriculum, and what organization you work for. And we provide that free of charge. And so as long as you've gone through the training, which is what this is, it counts. And as I develop, I make sure to communicate any of our resources, tools, as well as strategies. Like I've done written out strategies for teachers, especially in today's virtual learning, making sure that they're written out so that they can figure out how they can adapt them for virtual learning. What ways can we try to keep this, because it is not framed for virtual, implementation normally. So how can we make it more virtual friendly while we still have to?
Mm-hmm.
But that I'm available here to provide this curriculum if it's something you're interested in, absolutely. And the state, because of our funding, it is free of charge to anyone. And the only thing what you will have to deal with is emails from me when I check in to see if you're implementing it. And if so, how many youth are you reaching? Because we do have to report that.
Thank you, Lindsay. And we're going to provide Lindsay's contact information right after this slide right here, and as well in the chat box and email link. But thank you, everyone. And please help us improve our future virtual workshop experience by clicking the Survey Monkey link or using the QR code if you have your phone handy. So please note that you have to be off airplane mode. So you can use your Wi-Fi plan, or you can use your cell phone data plan. And then it'll take a snapshot of the actual QR code and then direct you to the link. So there's two ways to access the evaluation link. So yeah, please send it to everyone that was in the virtual room with you. And thank you, Lindsay. So here's, the link is still the same for tomorrow. And then Lindsay's contact information, I will go ahead and provide that immediately following this presentation. Is there any last final thoughts or questions? Well, thank you everyone for staying on and for having a great discussion and learning about mental health and keeping our youth resilient during this very difficult time. And thanks again to our presenter, Lindsay Hammer, for reaching out and giving us useful knowledge and teen adult communication skills in hopes of a brighter future for Alaskan teens. So please stay tuned for tomorrow's session at 10 o'clock. Same link again. And have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. That was really great.
I thought she's even next.
Let's see. Okay, so it's Lindsay's contact information. And everyone will also be given a copy of this through the email.
Great. And I've written down everyone's name so I can start participation certificates and everything. But if you have